Hello everyone, this is Colin once again. I just wanted to make this video because I've never made a video that's on a political topic. And I'm sure everyone who's been keeping up with the news, unless you're under a rock, or you don't have cable, or you've sworn off the news media, which, heck, in this day and age, I wouldn't really blame you. But if you've been paying attention to the news, I'm sure you are all aware of the current strife in the Middle East. And no, I'm not talking about the strifes that have been going on since my grandparents were middle-aged and owning a home, but I'm talking about the strifes that are happening in the current moment as we're talking. As I'm making this video, stuff's going on in the Middle East. And so I want to share my perspective on that topic. Now, I have discussed this topic with multiple people, academic individuals and otherwise, and I have found that there's a lot of misconceptions. There's a lot of just out there theories about what is happening in the Middle East right now. I'm talking about Egypt, Libya, Yemen. Now we're hearing about Syria, and the riots that are happening in Syria. What happened in Iran when the younger generation rose up and spoke out against the government, all these things. Now, if you, for whatever reason, whether it's personal political ideology or theological ideology, if you don't agree with the uprisings in the Middle East, that's cool. I personally think it's great. I think that if people feel like they're being oppressed and the government is not treating them as they would like to be treated, I think they have a right to protest. Now, I understand that that's a Western American bias, and maybe that's not how things are done in other mindsets or other cultural mindsets, and I'm totally understanding of that. This video is just all my opinion. If you disagree with anything I have to say in this video, of course, by all means, share your thoughts on it. But I think it's awesome. I think what's happening in Egypt, awesome. I think that if people are like, hey, you're a dictator and you want, to replace that person, I think everyone's got the right to do it. I think the people have a right to choose the form of government they want to be under. And if that form of government happens to be a democracy, then power to them. Having said that, I think that some of the misconceptions I keep hearing is like this. Like, let's take Egypt for an example. I have people who I've talked to some people who have said, "Oh, well, what if the Muslim Brotherhood take over?" And I really think that this is people who make this sort of claim or this sort of argument tend to make the statement without understanding the region and not even really understanding the Muslim Brotherhood, who they are, who are the Muslim Brotherhood, and what do they stand for, the whole 9 yards. And to me, it's like, I think a lot of people like Robert Spencer, Pamela Geller have took the Muslim Brotherhood, and why they focus on the Muslim Brotherhood only, I don't get. Aren't there a lot of other colorful groups that they could, focus on and to project their other, they're the other, agenda. I guess maybe it's a nice ring. I don't know. Does Muslim Brotherhood have a nice ring to it? I don't know. Anyway, but they picked the Muslim Brotherhood and they created the Muslim Brotherhood to be like this big boogeyman. Right, that those congressional people got together who were anti-Muslims being in the United States government, and they published that book saying the Muslim Mafia or some ridiculous thing, and so the Muslim Brotherhood was behind CARE. I mean, all this ridiculous, paranoia, total BS. And what they've done is they've effectively said the Muslim Brotherhood could take over Egypt. Well, if you understand the region, and I think a lot of people just don't understand the region, the voices of the Egyptian people is that they don't want the Muslim Brotherhood being in control. They want to have a democracy. That is what all of the protests that have been happening in the Middle East has been: down with the dictators, up with democracy. What President Bush wanted to do. President Bush wanted to bring democracy to the Middle East. He wanted to force it down people's gullets, and it, who knows if it's, I guess we can see if it's working in Iraq or Afghanistan. But what we're finding is homegrown, grassroots growing of democracy in these countries without the aid of outside forces. People being influenced by ideas, sure, and then one country, it's like a domino effect. The whole region now wants democracy, and and I think that's great, but they want democracy. So much so that this week, as reported by KPFA, who of course gets their information from no isolated source, and this is something you can look up and find on any media network, that the Egyptian people just ratified, well, I can't say for certain that they have built a constitution, but they are certainly forming a constitution. They just ratified this week, and they agreed that they're going to have a president with 2 terms, 4 years each term. Wonder who that sounds like. Let me think about that for a second. Oh, no. Oh, sounds like the United States of America, doesn't it? Yeah, it does, doesn't it? And it is. So they are mirroring their incoming, government off of, the United States of America, Western democracy, etc., etc. So I think the reason why a lot of people with certain political ideologies that usually are questioning Muslims and usually has this stint against Islam is this is like all this secular democratic movements that are happening in the Middle East are like throwing the rug, totally, tearing the rug out from underneath their feet. They're like, President Bush's mantra was, the terrorists hate our freedoms. And then a lot of people translated that mantra to people in the Middle East hate our freedoms, or they hate our way of life, right? You hear a lot of people, all these people just hate, democracy. They're cool with being under these dictators and everything. And come to find out that that's not actually the case. That's actually not true. And how do I know that? It's not because I know all these people in the Middle East personally. It's because look at what's happening. So it's one of those things of like, how can it be that you can do this thing of like, oh, Islam teaches people to hate Western values, or, oh, Middle Eastern Arabs just hate Western philosophy? Total baloney. Total baloney. I mean, you have to keep in mind that the Muslims were reading about Western democracy before the West was, at a period of time when the West wasn't even a democracy. They had the works of Plato and the foundations of Western democracy, and yet the West wasn't even a democracy during the Dark Ages. So it's not like the Muslims weren't aware of the foundations of a democratic state. Now, of course, I'm not saying that somehow the Muslims are responsible for democracy. I'm not actually saying that. What I'm saying is that this is not a foreign concept for the people of the Middle East. What they took from that, that's debatable. But what we're seeing now is a total expression of a democracy. Now, I'm not here to debate whether democracy is the best government or not. I personally enjoy the government that I'm under here in the United States, so I think that's perfect. I don't think any government is exactly perfect. We all have our flaws, and that's a given, I think. But I personally enjoy the country that I'm in. And if the people of the Middle East, if the people of Libya, Egypt, Yemen, Bahrain, Syria, Iran, if they want that, then the people will get it. Whether I make that state, whether I talk about it in this video or not. But I think it is hilarious that people, the bigots who hate Islam and hate Muslims and hate Arabs and hate the Middle East, no longer have this argument anymore. They cannot use this argument of, oh, well, they don't like us because of our values, or, or our way of government, or our way of life. Well, now you can't use that argument. That argument's it's gone. Totally gone because of what's happening now in the Middle East. Like I said, there were some people who, going back to saying, oh, well, what if they vote in, terrorist ideology, or what if they vote in, extremist, oh, the Muslim Brotherhood will take over. The thing, it's like I hear people saying stuff like, well, what do the Libyans want? Are they going to vote in someone worse than Gaddafi? And it's like, this is the same mentality. I feel like we've rewinded ourselves back to the 1950s, when people in our country, in the United States, and in our government were saying, well, wait, if they have a democracy, they'll vote in communism, and we can't have that now, can we? So we should take out their democratically elected leaders and put in a dictator, and then we don't have to worry about it anymore. And because we'll make the dictator our ally, and then we'll have no fear of them becoming communists. It's the exact same mindset. If you give the Middle Eastern people democracy, they could vote in something worse than the dictators that they once had. And I just, I think it is a foolish notion, considering that the majority of the countries that toppled their own dictators, that we set up, have gone to a point that is better off for them than their own people, than the dictators. Again, no one's perfect. No government is necessarily perfect. I'm not saying that. But I think it's this paranoia. It's like, wait a minute, why don't you give them a chance? Because didn't we force-feed democracy to the Afghans and the Iraqis, and have they voted in something that is reminiscent of this fictitious boogeyman, Muslim Brotherhood conspiracy theory, extremist ideology? No. So I'm confused now. Is it the force-fed democracy's cool, but the grassroots one isn't? I don't know. I don't know, friends. It's one of those things like, again, I'm not a political science major. I'm a layman in this topic. I'm just reading the news, seeing people's discussions, felt like making this video. But am I naive? I might be. I like to think that I have some sort of understanding of the history of the Middle East. I, was a history major for a long time. History is a passion of mine. I've studied the region's history. I've studied read many books by political scientists on the academic level. So I feel like I have some sort of understanding of the Middle East. But, in the current situation. But, I don't know. I just think that a lot of these arguments about, I think people they're switching gears. It's like people used to say, oh, they hate democracy, they'll never get democracy. And then it's like, oh, here's democracy. And then it's like, well, wait a minute, what are you going to do with that? That's what I feel like people are saying. It's like my metaphor for this is like, let's say you're a used car salesman, and you have this car, and you see a guy across the street, and you've noticed that he's looked at your car. You have the for sale sign on it, right? And you say to yourself, that guy's never going to want this car. Never. He'll never want it. He'll never want it. And then the guy, one day, after 4 years, comes over. I don't know why you haven't been able to sell the car in 4 years. Maybe that's a problem unto itself, but whatever. This is a metaphor. Guy comes over, finally, and says, after a long period of time, and says, I'd like to buy your car. And then you look at him and you go, wait a minute. And you say to him, hold on. Okay, you want this car now. Well, what are you going to do with this car? Are you a serial killer? Are you going to go around and kill people in this car? Are you a pimp? Are you going to, be pimping in this car? What are you going to do with this car, right? And then you just give him all this crap for finally wanting the car. And instead of letting him just buy the damn car, get in the car and drive off with it, and what he does, you'll find out. Or maybe you'll never hear about it because the guy is just going to use the damn car. That's the idea. It's like this Western mentality of, they're children. Everyone east of, southeast of Greece is a child, and we can't really let them figure their own way. We can't let them find their own way, because God forbid they should, discover for themselves whether democracy works for them or not. I mean, I forget which founding father it was that said that, democracy is a learned thing, not something you force on someone. Or maybe I'm making that up. Hey, maybe I just coined a new catchphrase for democracy, but I don't know. I think that more will be revealed. Maybe it's too early for me to have made this video, and will I definitely make more videos in the future about this topic? You bet. I will, and I think that it's important, but I really just think that this idea that all the people in the Middle East are all this uniformed, one thought process, they're a bunch of questionable extremists that want, the same brand of government, all of them, I'm sure there's people in the Middle East that don't want democracy, but yet the vast majority of the people in these movements that are changing the region want democracy. And I think that is something that everyone needs to remember. And how it's going to pan out, I don't know. I'm not psychic. But I think we need to be focused. This needs to be something that, for those of you who care about international news, this is something that we need to be focusing on to see which way it goes. So I hope this wasn't too preachy. It is confusing. But please share your thoughts on the subject. I would really value people's opinions. Thank you everyone for watching. Assalamu alaikum. Peace be with you all.